Hi, everybody. My name is Hari Subramanian. I am thrilled to welcome you to this open house on the world models of Indian industry. This is a long time coming, and I'm thrilled to be recording this. So, without further ado, let's jump right in. 6 months ago, while most of the world was still debating ChatGPT, the AI race had already moved on. Jan LeCun, the chief scientist of Meta, um, left Meta to build something called a world model. Fei Li raised $1 billion for the same thing. NVIDIA Cosmos crossed 2 million downloads. Stanford's AI index calls this the defining shift of 2026. Act 1 of AI was languages. Models learned by reading the public internet, Wikipedia code, news, books, pre-public, already published. Who scraped it best? One. India was a spectator for this Act 1. Act 2 is reality now. World models learn from how the world behaves, how networks fail, how fraud rings form, how markets react, how patients respond. None of this information lives on the public internet. It lives inside the institutions you work for, or you sell to, or compete with. Whoever wins Act 2 builds the AI category that defines an industry for the next 20 years. Robotic surgery in healthcare, self-healing networks in telcos, joint risk modeling in finance, each one is a category worth tens of billions of dollars. Act 2 has not been decided yet. It's being decided this year, and the data that will train the winners sits right behind your firewalls. Which means something specific for you. The institutions that are tuning in, that you're working with, the institutions that are in your customer pipeline are sitting on the most valuable training data on the planet for problems that matter at scale. A single Indian bank sees more retail transactions in a week than the entire US banking system processes. A single Indian telco operates more network conditions in a day than any peer globally. India has 1.5 billion bank accounts, 1.1 billion mobile subscribers, 18 billion UPI transactions in a month, the fastest 5G rollout in history, and the largest healthcare cohort by far. This is a vault. The world models trained on this data will be the best in their category globally, period. And right now, the vault is frozen. If you're wondering, let's see why. That frozen vault is why what comes next matters specifically to you. Everyone that is tuning in, incumbents, startups, has at some point built a model to solve a problem that turned out to be bigger than the model itself. Fraud detection at one bank, SIM swap defense at one telco, claim adjudication at one insurer, market surveillance at one broker. Your model is good, your data is good, your team is really good. And the thing you're modeling, the actual fraud ring, the manipulation pattern, the claim network, sits across institutions, yours plus 3 or 4 others. The boundary isn't volume, it's your firewall. So let's make this concrete with an example. Take the best mule detection program at one of India's leading banks. Real program, real team, world-class data scientists. They catch about 60% of attempted mule flows. By global benchmarks, that is actually leading. Here is what that missing 40% looks like. A mule isn't one person at one bank. A mule has accounts at 4 banks. Their patterns at your bank look ordinary. Small deposits, modest transfers, nothing dramatic. The ring, the recruitment, layering, the exit happens across those 4 banks. Your bank sees one slice of that. The 40% you miss aren't sophisticated frauds. They're ordinary frauds whose patterns happen to be visible at someone else's firewall. You cannot model what you cannot see. The team can be excellent. The data isn't there to be modeled. That's the problem. Now, consider what happens when 3 banks actually pool together the mule labeled transaction data into a sealed environment. And I'll come to the architecture in a minute. The crucial property, however, no bank ever sees another bank's records. The data goes into the computation, not into the partner's hands. The model catches 95%. That is not incremental. That's a regime change. The fraud ring's information advantage, the asymmetric edge they've held for a decade or more than a decade now flips. The institutions become bigger than the ring if this happens. Now, watch this go cross sector. SIM swap fraud. A fraudster persuades a telco to port a target number into their own SIM. OTPs from that target's bank then route to the fraudster's phone. The bank account empties. Here is what each party in this chain sees today. The telco sees a SIM swap. They have heuristics, port out velocity, document anomalies, geographic mismatches. They catch some but miss some. Most port requests look ordinary on the telco's side of the firewall. The bank sees an unusual transaction, login from a new device, an OTP delivered, transfer executed. They have fraud models, they catch some of them, but they miss some. Most transactions look like a customer's slightly unusual day on the bank side of the firewall because they only see their part of it. What neither party sees and what the fraudster's entire business model depends on is the handoff, the 5-minute window between the SIM port at the telco and the first suspicious login at the bank. The handoff is where the fraud lives, and it is invisible to anyone looking at it from just one side of it. Now, imagine 3 telcos and 3 banks pool their data into the same sealed environment. Each contributes their slice. None sees the other party's data. The model trains on the joint flow, port events linked to login events by the only thing that connects them, time and identity. The handoff becomes the most valuable thing in the system. SIM swap fraud, from the fraudster's perspective, dies. Now, this is the reveal. The architecture isn't about pooling within an industry. It's about pooling across economic graphs. Anywhere a phenomenon crosses institutional boundaries, and almost every fraud, almost every credit story, almost every market manipulation does this, and that's how this matters. Now, let's take a step backward for a second. I've shown you mule hunting and SIM swap defense. Same architecture, 2 different industries. The list keeps going. Cross bank credit risk on thin file borrowers, cross broker market manipulation, multi insurer claim fraud, cross operator network root cause analysis, multi hospital clinical prediction on Indian specific cohorts, cross utility grid balancing, cross OEM anonymous vehicle edge cases. Every one of these is a multi institution phenomenon currently being solved at one institution at a time. Every one is $100 million to multi-billion dollar category in its own right, and every one is unblocked by the exact same piece of infrastructure or lack of it thereof. Pick the one that maps to your business. That's the size of the prize that is sitting right in front of you in your table. Now, what changes is one specific thing. For the first time in the history of computing, we no longer need to choose between privacy and utility. That is not just rhetoric. It's mathematics, it's hardware, it is governance. If you're wondering, let me show you how. The architecture we're talking about is called DEPA. DEPA is Data Empowerment and Protection Architecture. The same volunteer ecosystem that designed the consent layer underneath UPI has been building this for multiple years now, and it is now live. Here is the entire thing. DEPA lets you train a model on someone else's data without their data ever leaving their hands. The 3 pieces that make this work, each one is independently verifiable. Pillar 1, the hardware pillar. Modern chips from Intel, AMD, NVIDIA ship today with sealed compartments, trusted execution environments. The chip contains an isolated computational region that not even the operating system or the cloud provider running the machine can see. When 3 banks pool their data into such a clean room, here is what physically happens. Each bank encrypts their data with the keys held by an independent key management service. The encrypted data goes to the sealed environment. The compartment proves cryptographically, signed by the chip itself, that only the agreed training code is running. Only then the decryption keys are released from the compartment. The data is decrypted inside the chip. The model trains, only the model leaves, and the data dies with the container. Same hardware base that protects WhatsApp messages for 2 billion users every day. It is not exotic anymore, and it's available. Pillar 2, that is cold hard math. Differential privacy is its name. This is the part worth understanding because it's genuinely relatively new. Anonymization is a fragile contract. You remove names, any motivated attacker re-identifies the by correlating the data with other data sets available. Differential privacy is a mathematical proof. It guarantees with calculable bounds that no individual record, no specific customer's transaction, no specific patient claims can be reverse engineered from the trained model. You set a privacy budget and you compute the leakage, the bound holds regardless of the attacker's capability. For the first time in the history of data regulation, you have guarantees that hold because the mathematics is true, not because someone audited it operationally once a quarter. And pillar three is registry. Every collaboration inside a clean room is governed by machine readable electronic contracts. Who is participating? What data? What is the purpose? What was the privacy budget set? What duration? Every action inside the compartment is logged into an immutable audit trail. We call it the DEPA chain. If something goes wrong, the record exists. If your regulator wants to inspect, the trail is cryptographically verifiable. If the participant disputes what happened, the contract is the source of truth. Sitting on top of this is Samyog, a neutral, not-for-profit, self-regulatory body that certifies clean room operators, manages key infrastructures, and resolves disputes. Same model as Sahamati did for account aggregators, industry-led, regulator recognized, and technology enforced. We call it techno-legal. You don't have to trust the other participants. Don't have to trust me because I'm talking about this here. You don't have to trust you just have to trust the architecture. And you can verify the architecture mathematically in code and on hardware. At this point, you want to know whether this is real or just research. So here is the honest answer. We have built population scale rails in this country before, 4 times. Aadhaar took identity digital, 1.5 billion identities issued. UPI took payments digital, 15 billion transactions a month, more than any payment rail on earth, on any corner of the earth. Account Aggregator took financial data, over 120 million accounts linked, 0 breaches in production. This is DEPA inference, and ABDM took 700 million health records online. DEPA training, the part that I just described, is the 5th rail. It is in early production. 2 million private customer inferences ran on Indian BFSI in the first 2 weeks of our first rollout. MeitY recognized it formally in the 2025 AI governance guidelines. The reference implementation is open source. The hardware is in every major cloud provider or private data centers. The legal templates exist. The community is forming now. This is not just a research paper. It is a platform shipping on the same institutional pattern that has delivered 4 prior DPIs at nation scale. This is a precedent worth waiting. Now, 3 ways to play this if you are still tuned in and interested. They map roughly, though not strictly, to where in the stack you sit. 1, if you run a large enterprise, lead a consortium. You already have the convening power. 2 of your peers will take your call. You have the engineering team to ship a pilot. What you may not have is the framing that this is doable in 90 days, not 18 months or a 24-month project cross-institution efforts usually take. Pick one phenomenon you cannot model alone: joint fraud, joint AML, joint claims, joint underwriting, surveillance, joint risk. Bring 2 other peer institutions together, spin up a confidential clean room, measure against your single institution baseline. Publish what you find. The downside is a paper for you. The upside is being institution that shaped how an entire category gets created. Sahamati is a precedent worth studying. The banks that joined account aggregator framework in the first 18 months don't just have an AI business today. They have a seat at the table at every adjacent data infrastructure question that comes up, and they are the experts. The second one, if you're building a B2B AI company, build the picks and shovels layer. Every consortium that runs needs tooling that does not exist yet. Privacy budget management, joint datasets, marketplaces, attestation and verification services, compliance and audit dashboards, connectors to the CCR substrate, model provenance tracking. The category is real. Customers are forming right now. Roughly 15 serious teams in India can be building this today. There could be 100 a year from now. If you are an AI startup looking for a wedge, this has the smallest competitive field of any vertical AI opportunity that's out there. And the buyers, the institutions are all around you, and they have committed budgets. You just have to go tap it in. The third, whichever side of the room you're in, join Samyog. Samyog is the self-regulatory body forming around DEPA training. The protocols being settled there, accreditation, key management, dispute resolution, privacy budget enforcement will become regulation in 18 to 24 months window from now. You either help write these protocols or you live with them when it's formed. Sahamati's history is instructive. The institutions that joined Sahamati in 2020 shaped the framework that now governs a market that's measured in trillions. The institutions that joined in 2023 are operating in a market that early movers designed later. So here is a closing thought. The world models that will define the next 20 years of regulated industries, credit, fraud, claims, networks, clinical research, market surveillance are getting built right now. Within 5 years, maybe even sooner, the architecture for how that happens is being chosen this year. The question is not whether, the question is by whom, on whose rails, with whose rules. If the world models that prize Indian credit, detect Indian fraud, audit Indian markets, and reserve Indian claims are built by Indian institutions on Indian rails under your supervision, we own the most valuable intellectual property of the next 2 decades. And the AI that runs your industries belongs to your industries. If they build somewhere else on someone else's infrastructure with our data leaking out, one bilateral license at a time, we become customers. We pay rent on that data that once was ours. In every prior platform shift, cloud, mobile, even generative AI, both kinds of players won. The incumbents who moved early, say that's the JP Morgan in the cloud, Disney in streaming, ICICI in UPI, they won. The startups who moved early, the Stripes, the Razorpays, the Snowflakes won. The ones who waited for this architecture to settle on both sides are still trying to catch up. The reframe at the start that I actually gave was that the thing you're trying to model is bigger than your one company. The data that you need to do that sits not inside your firewall alone. The implication is that the next decade of competitive advantage in regulated industries belongs to whoever figures out first how to model across those boundaries while keeping the data inside them. While that sounds odd, that is what is happening. The world models of Indian industry are going to get built. The only question is by whom. Thanks for tuning in. Join Samyog.